John, do we have everyone here? I'm trying to look our team wise. You guys are missing Hawk.
I think that's it. And I think that's it. And we resent Hawk the link. So if he's able to, he'll be joining when he can.
Okay. Should we get going?
I think we should, yes.
Okay.
Just a little housekeeping thing. We have Emily Gaffney joining us again today in Sarah Fitch's place.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Emily.
All righty. Well, John, where do you want to start? I feel a little bit rudderless because all of our prior sessions up to this point have been so kind of focused intently on schedules and things like that. So I feel like we got over that hurdle. So just trying to kind of reset my brain a little bit. So what's your thinking for today?
Well, Lisa and I spoke briefly yesterday afternoon, and we, talked about how one of the key things that we need to discuss was some sort of understanding of evaluation. And I believe that we sent over, and I apologize for the delay. I needed time to work on it, and then that was yesterday afternoon, and then time for, as a committee, time for me to write up the ideas and then get it over, have them look at the ideas that I typed up and send it over to you. So it was as fast as I could turn it around. So you just received it. Probably 90% of that document you've seen before. The things that were changed, I tried to underline so you could see those. But there is the evaluation language that we sent over earlier with a very mild change to it, based a little bit on the conversation that we had. But it's really a placeholder because I think you guys have ideas on evaluation. I think we needed to spend some time talking about, well, even if just briefly, I think we need to have a conversation about, just for the record, that even though we've tried to get the TAs signed and back and forth, and there's been a little bit of a glitch on that also, what elements are in effect and what elements are waiting for a full TA, if any. And then last but not least, I know we said we were essentially done with schedules, but an issue has come up, and it's come up a little on our end also. The special education implications for special education has come up. So just when you think you're, to quote The Godfather, just when I'm done, they pull me back in. Well, it looks like number 6, not in terms of the way the language is written or what we all understand, but in the way it's being applied seems a little strange in a few areas. So as two bargaining committees, we should probably discuss that. Then after that, I think we just have to, we can just sort of, I tried to send over clarity on the part-time individuals also. Lisa was saying that your team was essentially waiting for a response from us. And thinking about all of the different versions in our conversations and what it was that we were looking for, Steve's comment, and that includes teaching, and your response that, yes, we understood that to be the case, and, blah, 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 blah. I tried to put the language that, not that you agreed to necessarily, but that sort of completely codified our thinking on how that would work. And that's what's new, I think, primarily about this proposal, is that I tried to break it, because you had said about proportionality. So we'll get into this as we go through the session, but I tried to break it into proportionality for individuals who receive the planning period and individuals who don't receive a planning period. So it's just clear. That's why I added a new sort of 9. I guess that's how I see the day progressing, but I'm open to, I don't mean to sort of dictate that. I'm open to any ideas or additions or subtractions or anything else you might want to add.
Lisa or Sharon, do you have anything that you want to add into the mix? Hearing none.
I think that sounds right.
Okay.
So
Where do you want to start then with John?
That's what I was going to just ask.
I mean, we can
What do you
start
want
with
to do
evaluation.
first?
We can start with evaluations if you want. I know that that's been a topic that there's been an exchange kind of back and forth on email. So, and it's also sort of a timeliness one as well. So that might be a good place to start if that works for everybody.
I think that's great.
And
Okay.
can I ask, is Claire Skelly or somebody from special ed joining us today?
We do not have Claire. We're trying to be cognizant and respectful of Claire's overall workload.
Okay.
So as needed, I think we're prepared to bring her back in, but today she's not scheduled to be with us in this meeting, correct, Sharon?
Yeah, we thought we had reached a TA on the SPED issue, so didn't think that she would be needed, but we can always pull her in as issues come up.
Okay.
Well, Sharon, then why don't it doesn't have to be done this instant. And we're going from 12 until 3, which is really basically 12:20 until 3. So maybe I'll explain to you what we were talking about in terms of the rubber meeting the road for special ed, and then you can decide whether or not this is an appropriate time to pull her in or not. But there were 2 instances where it appeared that the schedule is not, I don't know if it's application or what the case may be, but there are, and of course, Charity, you can fill in briefly just so that Sharon will understand what's going on. But one of them has to do with what happens when the IEP minutes assigned to an individual is more than what we have agreed to. In other words, it's not possible to have 950 minutes of the educator-directed time because the IEP requires so many service minutes. That's one element. And the other one had to do with just the way the schedules are being given to them and the requests that are being made of them, like attending all the IEPs for every grade level and that sort of thing. So, I mean,
PLCs, sorry, just to-
PLCs, excuse me. I said IEP, excuse me, PLCs, yes. Those types of things, so that it's not really the issue of the language so much, but it's about how it's being applied. And we just wanted to have a common sense of it so that we can explain to principals how that really would work out. But with that as the intro comments, you can decide whether it's important to bring her back today or whether we can proceed without her.
Thoughts, Sharon?
Well, it sounds like I'm wondering if we can turn to another topic while we ask if she's available.
Yeah, oh yes. Yes, I think so. I just wanted to get that out there now so you would be able to think about it with her or not as you see fit. And we'll get to it at the end of the meeting anyway. So it's not like it has to be done this second. I think we're about to discuss evaluation.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so do you want me to screen share or do you want to put up our?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Huh. Here we go. Success, can you see?
Yes.
All right, great. So we, I mean, the format is different. The placements of everything is pretty much the same. You know, we blended the sections together. As I said, anything that was new language, we tried to put, if I missed anything, please understand, it's an omission by accident, not by intention. So number 24 is essentially the language we had before with an additional introductory sentence, and 25 also deals with elements of evaluation. So if you remember, originally we had proposed that all evaluations would be on hold during this time period. And you were saying you didn't even know if that was possible, Brian, and it turns out you were correct. The ODE is saying, yes, you have to continue to evaluate probationary instructors for sure. And so what we then made a modified proposal to that. I think in August, God knows, I think it was August 27th or something like that. But anyway, that's when we sent this language. The only thing new in 24 and 25 is that first sentence. And so this sentence is based upon the discussions that Lisa and I had. It's not meant to be the absolute, just a way to try and get the idea across. And that is, before any observations occur in the 2021 school year, the district and the association shall jointly agree on new or modified existing evaluation tool for use during CDL or distance learning in a hybrid model. And that's the new element. And what we thought was important is that when that new element is developed, there needs to be a specific rollout to educate to the principals and vice principals in the building, because they've spent so much time working and mastering the existing evaluation tool, which is really lengthy. So the question is, okay, we should probably jointly put that training together so everybody understands the intention of whatever it is that we do. And then the issue of plans of assistance in 25, as you can see, it's the same one that we had there. Lisa and I spoke about this briefly yesterday, and Lisa, you may have spoken with your team about it or not. But I mean, just to give a brief summary of what I was suggesting to Lisa, we're concerned that the plans of assistance that are in place were based on an evaluation that may not be applicable in this comprehensive distance learning time period, because the things that an evaluator was supposed to check no longer exist in this setting. So we didn't want to have a sort of automatic battle in grievance and counter grievance over whether or not you're making me live by a plan of assistance, but you've changed the terms of it midstream because what I theoretically was unsatisfactory and no longer applies. So you gave me something else, but that's something else you didn't observe me failing in. So why do I have to be on a plan? It was all these things. I began to think about how these all began to work together, which is why we're suggesting that until we get 24 done, we put a hold on 25 on the IE POAs. Brian, you're on mute. Sorry.
Okay, thanks for that run through. I think I'd like to maybe, who has the most in-depth knowledge of our evaluation, I guess, tool in our meeting today? Is that you, Kathleen?
I've certainly done it enough. Yes.
Because I think one thing that's relevant to think about is, what level of change is likely to be necessary, or what level of temporary change or modification is likely to be necessary in order for that evaluation tool to be utilized this year. Because John, as you mentioned, we know from ODE that we need to evaluate, and it's, as is often the case from ODE, it's not the clearest guidance. I mean, it's clear that we have to evaluate our probationary folks, although then it also says we're supposed to evaluate people who are on cycle. So we do have some, it's clear that we need to evaluate, and I think we would have gone that direction anyway, because we have things like our necessary decision making on probationary folks is pretty important. And so we've got so many timelines built in that evaluation protocol that unfortunately the timelines don't really change for us, right? I mean, we still have a March 15 deadline, and then you kind of back up everything off of that.
Sure.
And so the timelines in that evaluation protocol, Lisa, we were just looking at it. We have certain dates by which observations are supposed to occur, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember off the top of your head what those various benchmarks were?
It's sometime in October for probe 1, and then it's before Thanksgiving for probe 2 and before winter break for probe 3.
Okay. Yeah, there's is October 1 one of the dates, Kathleen?
October 31st, by October 31st.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Goal setting is recommended by October the 1st for probationary 1, I believe.
Yeah. And we know from ODE that we're still supposed to set goals. That was a piece of that as well. So John, just what our team has been discussing is the fear that putting it into a kind of an undefined or no time frame setup may leave us unable to meet those deadlines for our observations. And I think that's why we had talked as a team about putting some date certain by which this collaborative effort would be completed, because we need to move things forward. I mean, we always have a joint interest in moving things forward as quickly as possible, yet we all have the shared reality of things taking longer than we expect them to take, including this MOU. Probably everybody is experiencing that. You know, that's a worry for us. If we were to go without some date certain, we get into November and we still don't have resolution, and we still haven't been able to do observations, then that leaves us in a pretty tough spot, especially with our probe ones.
Sure.
And so, you know, thinking about what you guys have proposed there, that before we do any observations, we're going to jointly agree on a new or modified existing evaluation tool for use. I mean, I think I'll start with the areas where I think we have commonality. We agree that obviously that the parties or a subset of the parties need to meet to review that evaluation framework and see if any changes need to be made to it. So I think we're on the same page there. I think where we were going with it, and I believe you and Lisa had the conversation. Lisa, you put out the date of like October 15th, didn't you? And John, it sounds like you felt like that was too soon, or at least that's how the exchange was relayed to me. So I probably shouldn't comment.
Yeah, it's not that I don't understand why October 15th would be a target, but the problem is that obviously I mean, we are all, I know you're included in this, so I say this for everybody on the video. I'm essentially in meetings early morning until, you know, 7 o'clock-ish, 5 days a week almost, if not more, which means that we'll have to go outside this immediate group on the screen to be able to pull together people to be on an evaluation development committee, which means that we have to A, find them, and B, get them to agree to, you know, alter their schedule with their students, which I was suggesting to Lisa. It's Wednesday. We're in meetings all day tomorrow. Earliest we could get that together would be Tuesday. They're not going to be able to just sort of instantly drop what they're doing. No, so that's the following week, and that puts them almost at, I don't mean this is a joke, but it puts them after the first, certainly into like the 6th or 7th, giving them all of probably 2 meetings to alter the entire document. And I took a quick look at the rubric, for example, that we're using. And Brian, we use a modified Danielson model.
Okay.
And I know you may not have had to apply it or work under it, but I'm sure you've helped to bargain it. So, you know, when you look at domain number 1 and you look at the levels and things that have to be evaluated, like, for example, the educator demonstrates an understanding of how students learn. Well, yeah, that means one thing totally that really can't be applied in this setting. Because how in a classroom setting do you develop, you know, tactile activities? How do you develop it? The limitations of CDL are such that when I took a look at it, you know, under the first domain, the first 5 major components there, maybe 2 of the elements worked in the whole collection of them. So I mean, there's some radical reevaluation that needs to take place.
John, do you think it's the way that you assess whether those domains are met, or the domains themselves? Because, you know, that the one that you referenced about ensuring that students are learning, I can't remember the exact way you framed it. I mean, it seems like
knowledge of how students learn.
Knowledge of how students learn. I mean, it seems like that domain or that standard is still applicable. What it looks like under CDL is how I might assess it as the evaluator needs to look different, certainly, right?
Well, yes, because there are specific activities that take place in a brick and mortar setting that indicate, this person with that grade level and that age students and their capabilities is familiar with brain development and cognitive capacity and how to the interplay of different types of activities work. But you can't really do that, particularly when students have hard times connecting. Think about how many students in this district are working with hotspots that don't really provide full access.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I asked just my bargaining team, take a look and say what was student engagement like? In one, about 80% of the students were engaging. In another, about 2/3 were engaging. In another, a third of them were engaging. So how do you demonstrate? Do you know what I'm saying? How
Well,
can you demonstrate this? It doesn't seem to, it seems like if we don't do a radical rearrange, we're in a constant battle with everybody on the evaluation and whether or not it's fair.
not to mention that there's many teachers that are, well, teachers are responsible for carrying out the basic function of a school district, which is to educate children. And we're on computers that glitch, like John said, they're slow, they kick us off, they kick students off, it's impossible to see the whole entire class just because of the way it's set up. And all of those things impede multiple times in a session our ability to carry out the function of, a meaningful class session. So it seems really unfair to, to use a evaluation tool that is set up for a traditional brick and mortar type of year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're faced with some realities here that we all kind of have to come to grips with, right?
Right.
Number one, there's significant hurdles that exist here in providing instruction over CDL that don't exist in brick and mortar. I acknowledge that. I think we all definitely recognize that. Number two reality is state has said we're going to evaluate people this year. And so while I agree that there are challenges in doing those evaluations, based on things that you're talking about, like technology and the instructional setting being completely different, we know we have to still evaluate, right? And I guess reality three is we don't have the amount of time necessary to completely redesign the evaluation framework, because those of you who have been involved with developing an evaluation handbook and protocols for a district, that's a months and months and months long process, right?
Yeah, 2.5 years for.
Yeah. So we don't have that. We know we don't have that time. So we're gonna have to limp by with, a kind of a square peg in a round hole this year. I mean, I think that's kind of the reality of it. I know we
Right,
don't
but
like
Brian,
that.
there's one other element to this. You have people's entire livelihood and career on the line. So the implication, this is not just, hey, let's get an evaluation and we're going to say, does the individual arrive on time and we're not talking about an evaluation. We're talking about an evaluation that essentially makes it, because if things go poorly under some sort of mashed up evaluation tool, and the district says, you know what, thanks, but it's just not working out. Every single time that person applies for a job in the state of Oregon, they're going to have to say, yes, I did have another teaching position and I was non-extended or non-renewed, depending on the cases.
Yeah.
And they will never get an interview, period.
Well, John, I mean, I'm presuming that we're talking in that scenario primarily about probationary folks. I mean, I think
or anybody on a plan of assistance.
Yeah, we know with our contract folks that that there would be significant hurdles for the district if it went to take employment action based solely on evaluations that were occurring during CDL. I mean, I think that would, knowing the fair dismissal system the way I do, there would be some pretty tall hurdles if you were saying, hey, we evaluated you during this year of CDL, found you to have shortcomings, and therefore we're either non-extending you or dismissing you. I think districts would face some pretty significant legal challenges there. Probationary people, yeah, we do have more flexibility with, but I don't think the district has an interest. I know they don't have an interest in prematurely or unnecessarily cutting probationary folks loose. I mean, I think the district recruits and hires and puts a lot of effort into people and trains them. And so we're not trying to defend our interest here of unnecessarily getting rid of people.
No, I don't think you are.
Okay.
That's not my suggestion. My suggestion is that in a time period when all educators, new and and experienced, are struggling to try and figure out how to make this work, to use a poorly adapted tool to evaluate those people and potentially continue their employment is just simply unfair. and wrong. These are people who are carrying, in some cases, they are carrying, $70, $80, $90,000 of student loan in order to be able to become educators. They're going to be paying that loan until they can hopefully get, if things work out, on some form of loan forgiveness under the federal program. And that's if things work out. If not, they essentially are carrying a small mortgage with whatever other job they can get. I mean, this is financial stability for multiple years down the road. So we cannot mess with some sort of, let's just get through this evaluation tool. I put this into the room because you said there are 3 things we all have to take into account. And the 4th thing that wasn't included in that is the really significant implications for the people we represent and the people that you guys have hired.
Yeah, I accept that. I mean, so I guess then the
I
question,
know.
how do we mesh those things, right? Knowing
Right.
that time is not on our side, right? Time's not on our side in this situation. And so I don't want a poorly designed evaluation tool, but I need it to be one that can be put into effect soon enough where observations can actually happen and assessments can be made before we get to our imposed deadlines.
No, in March, right.
Yeah, I mean, the state could have said, we're extending deadlines this year till May. The state could have said, we're setting aside all of those deadlines for this year. The state could have done a lot of things, which they didn't do. So I know, and I know that there is part of a work product that's already been floating out there. And Kathleen, you may know about this, or at least, I mean, Danielson has done some work on a revision or a CDL suggested evaluation framework, correct?
It's actually linked in the guidance that ODE provided. There's actually a link to Danielson Remote Teaching Framework, which uses, because our evaluation tool is based off of that framework, it actually picks out 8 components that would be part of the evaluation process that are already contained within our evaluation, and also gives virtual teaching look-fors and suggestions.
So, I mean, hopefully that will give that committee or that group something of a head start. I mean, it's good that you already are using a Danielson framework, because this should have applicability or overlap, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that gives me some optimism that you won't have to be starting from scratch or completely reinventing things.
And Brian, I just wanted to say one
No.
thing, if I may. So I have been emailing Lisa, I think, for about 2.5 weeks now, trying to set something up so we can actually get started on this work in terms of modifying an evaluation framework for this year. So I think we all appreciate the time sensitivity and the workload we all have, but
Yeah, I don't think anyone's dragging their feet. That's definitely not my allegation that you guys are not interested in moving quickly. I suppose I don't even know on your underlying sentence how different we are, John. I guess what I'm just saying is, I feel like from our team's discussion and perspective, we don't feel like we can leave it without some date upon which observations can start. That's our primary interest and concern here, and we also have to account for those dates that are already set up in that evaluation document, that are calling for observations to hit at certain points.
Brian, those dates are in our contract, not, I don't think, in the.
They're in the CBA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, teachers are at their breaking point. Work-life balance is completely impossible right now. So, we're working 12 to 14-hour days, trying to make up resources that we thought we were going to have, deal with technology issues. It's whatever advocacy can happen to adjust those dates, or I know that the state kind of left us, in an impossible situation. I would ask that we advocate for grace for our teachers to, when they're faced with an evaluation in this extreme environment, we need them to know that we're all behind them, that, they need to feel that, that this is an extreme situation and this is totally unfair. As someone said, we're trying to build the plane while we're flying it, and to evaluate someone during this time is totally unacceptable.
Well, certainly to evaluate them on some components. I guess evaluate them overall, I guess I would have some disagreement that that's unfair. I mean, there are certain components that clearly we need to assess teacher performance on. I think what I also want to stay out of a situation is, especially with our probationary ones, where people aren't getting observation and feedback until so far into the year or so close to our March 13 deadline that they can't make meaningful correction if necessary, or address noted shortcomings before we get to our deadlines. So, if we weren't giving an observation and feedback to our P1s until sometime in November or mid-November, especially, that March 13 deadline, I know you understand this, it really backs up to more like a February 15 deadline, because decisions have to get made and communicated to HR, and things need to get on the report going to the board. And so all of that's happening in advance of that March 15 deadline. So if we don't observe and give feedback to our probationary ones until sometime in November, and then we all know December's like a half a month, we're really collapsing down our time frame on those folks to like a 2-month time frame. That's what I'm trying to avoid, because I think we all have an interest in fairness, but getting timely feedback and opportunity to demonstrate change is also a core component of the evaluation system, right?
But
We don't want to surprise people.
Yeah.
Does that include the understanding that the evaluation is based on the teacher being unable to do some things because of the situation, because of the pandemic, because of the computer glitches, because of the 150 other things that are going on? I mean, that's a terrible got you moment. I mean, what are you're obviously you're going to do the best you can. I understand the need for evaluation, but you just can't have somebody, and I don't use the word fair because I think fair is in the eye of the beholder. It's not right to evaluate somebody when they've already gotten something that's not, for lack of a better word, that's already broken. Holding them accountable for it working and working correctly. Because you have to, first of all, figure out what you have and how you can make it work, and then how does it work best for you in your situation.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think part of what I feel like we're debating is the merits of evaluating these people at all, and that's beyond debate because the state tells us we're going to.
Yes, I think that you are not. I think we're reacting to and I'm not sure. It was my sense that your comments were indicating that we really needed to get to this on the 15th.
That was our prescribed date, the one that came to our mind, just setting a date and saying we're not going to observe until October 15th. That's the one that we came up with as a team. And I guess I hear concern about not being able to get the necessary work done on that evaluation, modification by then. And I understand that. And John, man, I know the problem with trying to schedule meetings right now and the amount of work on people's plate. So that is no doubt. I'm sure the people who are on our district, who would be on the district team for that evaluation, are probably thinking, yeah, where am I going to squeeze that meeting in, or that series of meetings? But we just need to not compress it so far.
Not extend,
on the back end. That's what we need to stay away from. So
I happen to agree, and I am not suggesting, and I don't think anyone on our team, you've heard, I think everyone say that we recognize A, the legal responsibility to evaluate, and B, that all employees need feedback in any position they do, no matter what the work setting. However, trying to get that done by the 15th, I think, is what you're hearing. We're concerned about banging together some sort of guide and then having it applied in a way where the administrative staff doesn't have a full training on if people receive training saying the evaluation is primarily a coaching tool right now, And it is one of the primary elements. And there's all sorts of things that I think that have to become part of the training for administrators in this time period that may not be applicable or appropriate in a different setting. So that's how we're looking at A, getting the tool ready by the 15th, and B, when the heck are we talking about using it? Because I got the impression that, if it's ready on the 15th, we want to start using it on the 16th, which I understand because of the timelines. I get that. And I do, honestly. It's just, I don't know really. I think for the sake of the principal staff, for the administrative staff as well, having a common understanding across the district that the PAT is part of and can help explain to the members about how this tool is going to be used and what things are applicable is really important to having this go well.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
Right.
I think we disagree about less than it possibly sounds like from our conversation. I think, some of my frustration is even in what I'll call a normal year, it feels like our timeline is compressed to make decisions by March 15th on people. We've long complained about it. We've long told the legislature that's too early.
Yep.
And so, that's part of my frustration that carries over into this conversation. And then, I want to stay out of a possible scenario where in the off chance that a probationary person is non-renewed, for example, then the argument is like, well, I didn't even get evaluated, or I didn't even get observed with feedback until, early December. So it's not fair to now be telling me I'm non-renewed. And then we say, well, the reason we didn't even observe you and give you feedback until December is because we were bound by an agreement to not do that. I mean, it's kind of like a circular problem.
Yeah,
I'm trying to stay out of that.
Yep, we agree on both those points.
When your reference to observations in that sentence, is that what I would think of as a formal observation? Is that including informals, or how?
Where are we?
The first line of your proposed language, before any observations occur in the 2020-21 school year.
Right. So that would be to the formal observations. Frankly, it would also apply, though, to a certain extent. I don't mind people, taking notes. The question is, what are they looking for when they're taking notes? Lisa and I spoke about that last year, and I mean, we don't. If you're an administrator and you're doing a drop-in because you're there for a particular period of time, it's sensible to say to oneself before walking in, I'm only going to be here for 5 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever, and I'm really looking for the use of questioning in the classroom. I'm really going to check for if grouping is taking place, I'll check on how the groups are set up, because you're only there for a tiny bit of time. But without an evaluation tool, what exactly is the informal observer there for? Just, because think about the things that we've been talking about. We've been, is it appropriate materials for the students, and are they grade level appropriate? Well, we've been through this 1,000 times, these negotiations. The district is placing tons of things on Canvas and tons of things on Seesaw. So the vast number of educators, the majority of educators in most of these, are selecting materials the district has produced. So what's the point of checking that? Like, there's all these things, as Hawk said, what do you do when you have intentions to do certain things and you may have planned to do certain things, but students can't get to the breakout room. Students can't do, there's a whole series of problems that come along with connectivity that may be different from one building to another building based upon, family access to technology. It's just, I don't know. I mean, any administrator can do a drop-in at any time. I don't think there's an educator on the planet who doesn't say, yeah, come and check what I'm doing. It's okay. But if they're doing it for the purpose of the evaluation specifically, that's where it's tough if they don't know what they're doing. So, I mean, really, the main reason is the formal observation, but I mean, it's applicable to a certain extent to the informal as well.
And I would just say that, yeah, I think there's common understanding that informal observations can happen, whenever principals can drop in. But even with the most supportive principal that understands what this situation is like right now, having someone observe you informally in this timing right now and within the last, couple weeks, and it's just extreme pressure. So I don't think we're going to get, observations that are going to mean anything other than you see a teacher that is struggling. I mean, I'm a veteran teacher. Our team is made up of veteran teachers and we're struggling. So for those probationary one, I just feel so bad for them.
So before we go any further into analyzing specific lines of contract proposal, I wanted to say a couple of things. One is I heard a Danielson framework that's specific to distance learning being referenced, and my initial reaction to that is I have no idea what that looks like. If I were to be evaluated on a rubric that is somehow different than the rubric that I have always been evaluated on, that would be like me trying to test my students without ever giving them what the learning targets are. And you would just never hold students accountable for knowing something when they didn't know what they were supposed to know. So I don't think that we can introduce at this stage of the game some type of new rubric that has new requirements or new guidelines for how we are to do business in our classrooms in midstream. I just don't see how you can do that and have it be meaningful in any genuine sense. I think that the state has required us to evaluate, but it hasn't mandated what the specific form of evaluation would be. There is nothing that stops us from just greatly reducing the scope of elements in an evaluation from what currently exists that is in fact applicable to a distance learning environment, and using that much reduced scope of evaluation as the evaluation tool to mutually agree which pieces that we already know we're supposed to be evaluated on, which pieces will we still look at. And then secondly, I think that given the fact that none of us, unless we have come from a prior teaching job in a web academy, none of us are going to be competent or proficient in much of what we are doing right now. And so I think the standard that we held our students to, which was do no harm to students, is the same standard that we should hold our educators to during this period of time when it comes to evaluation. And if we want to say that an educator's professional performance is so deficient, so egregiously poor that it warrants non-renewal or not extending a contract to someone, then we need to talk about what would that look like? What would be the things that you would be doing now or not doing now that are so beyond the pale that we would violate our standard of do no harm to teachers during this time. That is, I think that is a more productive conversation and doable within the constraints of time that we have. We are not going to be able to negotiate a detailed evaluation rubric that's going to be mutually agreeable between now and October 15th. Mm-hmm. It's just not going to happen. But what we could mutually agree on is a reduced scale of the current evaluation and some criterion on which we could agree, yeah, that's bad enough to say, no, I don't think we need to have you as a teacher anymore.
So Steve, again, I feel like we're, in some ways, you and I are saying the same things, in some ways not, but like this, our initial proposed language was what I put in the chat. The district and the association agree that the current evaluation process shall be utilized during distance learning to the extent it is applicable, which we weren't really contemplating a complete redesign. We were contemplating a look at our current process as you were just referencing. But to some degree, I feel like I'm hearing maybe two different, and if I'm just hearing it wrong, then I apologize. But I feel like two different kind of messages from you and from John. I feel you saying we shouldn't tinker too much with the current evaluation system. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, just paraphrasing. So correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm sure you will. I feel you saying we shouldn't tinker too much with the current evaluation system and try and introduce kind of a wholesale new reform to it. But then, John, I felt you were saying to some degree, it's so radically different, our environment we find ourselves in, that the current process just really isn't applicable. So I almost feel like those are not in complete agreement, those two positions. I feel a little caught between those two.
I think that, and John, you can weigh in on this if you disagree with what I'm saying. I think that we can use a vastly reduced portion, perhaps, of the current evaluation process. So paring it down dramatically. So when you say to the extent applicable, we can decide that we're only going to apply a very limited number of things from the evaluation tool. So it would not be just a, evaluation is normal, but we're just not doing this one little thing and this one little thing. No, a significantly reduced evaluation metric from the existing tool. And when I say the standard of do no harm to teachers, I think that's where it's meshing with what John was saying, is that we really should be using the evaluation right now as a way of helping educators to be able to focus their efforts to deliver the best instruction possible under the worst circumstances that we have, versus telling teachers this is going to determine whether or not you get to keep your job.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, we have to have something that informs those decisions, though, right, Steve? Because by state law, we make decisions about whether people are, especially our probationary people, renewed or not by that March 15 deadline. Something needs to inform those decisions, right?
And that's what I'm saying is that what we could talk about is what are the circumstances or the observed behaviors or lack of behavior that we could mutually agree are so beyond acceptable that it would warrant a non-extension, non-renewal under these current circumstances.
Yeah, I feel like that maybe it goes beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here in the MOU. I mean, the district never bargains away its right to make decisions on probationary folks. I mean, intentionally so. That's the statute allows broad discretion, and I don't think we'd be interested in bargaining. What are the scenarios where we could non-renew a probationary teacher? I mean, there's a reason it's not in the contract to begin with. I can't imagine us putting it in now. I feel like that's going to take us down a very different road.
Yeah. So what I was to go to what Steve was saying, when I was mentioning that I had looked at our existing rubric, there was I mentioned it under domain 1, I saw maybe 2 or 3 of all the elements that seemed still alive. Mm-hmm. There are, I'm guessing, 30 some elements that are there. Are we all going to agree? Let's go back to this. Steve's comment about what's the intent and my comment about a training on the intent of the tool, I think, is something we have to agree on, and how it's going to be used. And then what parts of that reduced, as Steve said, greatly reduced. That's what I've been talking about. I can't imagine we'd start from scratch. But I mean, if we're not talking about we're not going to be talking about instructional materials being provided, and we're not going to be really talking about instructional groups because not every kid can actually log in, then really what we're talking about is whatever activities in the limited section that are there might be applicable. I mean, that's even if all we did was that one component of domain 1, I bet we'd have back and forth for a couple of hours in that group on how to use the existing rubric. I just think that we agree that it has, let's make it clear again. We agree it has to be done. We don't want it to take a long time. We do think it can be done, but we don't think it can be done by the 15th.
Do you have a suggested or a thought on an alternate date by which? I mean, again, as I indicated, I don't think we're married to October 15th. That was the date that our team came up with in our discussions. But I'd be interested to hear if your team had notions of what that date is, if not October 15. Certainly.
Well, I'm not, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't want to just throw out a date. I don't
Yeah,
know. We
that's
haven't
fair.
really discussed it. But I mean, we could potentially accomplish this if we could agree that we're going to look at the 4 domains and we're going to have domain 1 completed by blank date domain. And evaluators can start going in and saying to the people they'll be dropping in on, hey, I'm only evaluating you on these components from the existing tool and only in domain 1. So that way, there's no, again, to talk about Hawk's comment, there's no got you involved because people know, when they're stopping in, they're looking for these things particularly from me. And they, you'll do the best job you can. And the evaluator knows when I go in, I'm really not looking for whether or not I like the assignment that was given because the assignment came out of Canvas and we made that, not the teacher, right? I mean, there's some of these things that I think we can probably get it done in chunks by particular dates, but the whole tool, I don't know. So, I mean, again, maybe we have a little break and we talk about the 2 teams about what we think is a reasonable date and how we go about this. Because it's a great question and it's the obvious question that you asked. It's just one that I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, I mean, that would be helpful for us. I mean, because your proposal, and again, I'm not trying to take us too far into the weeds here because I view our work here in the context of this MOU to be far more limited than the work that the evaluation that this subcommittee would do to actually parse down that evaluation instrument.
Right.
So I don't want to drag that into here for sure. I'm not objecting for the most part to that underlined sentence. I think we just need some benchmark date by which the district can start doing its formal observations so that we can meet all of those other legal responsibilities. That's really my only comment on the underlined piece.
Why don't we take, this is, I know it's early in the session today, but why don't we take, while we've had these discussions, they've been, we've gone around and around and agreed that we're in the same place. Let's have a brief break so our teams can get together and talk about what a reasonable date would be and how we get there.
It sounds good.
It's 1:15. I can't promise, but can we say 1:30?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. And I will, obviously, Lisa, I will text you if we need more time.
Okay.
And we'll do everything we can to get there by the 15th.
Okay.
The 15 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. All right. And my team will go back to that meeting room that we just had.